welcome back to the Reale Railroad Shop, where we're going to get started with this steam RailPro installation, as it has a little bit more steps involved than the diesel in our last video that we did. We're going to also showcase our custom built smoke units here in the shop, as well as signaling them with a chuff installation versus just on and off button function. We hope you enjoy it, and we're going to get started here. We're going to dive into this steam locomotive K27 Bachmann Spectrum, but with the RailPro operating system. This is going to showcase their new board, which is LM5S-G. It has two wiring harnesses, which are shown here. We're going to be using a Visiton speaker, 18.5 volt battery, Loctite glue, power switch harness that's already pre-assembled. You can buy it on our website, or also RLD Hobbies, which has them both on there. All weatherproof electrical tape, power coupler, and we're going to be using warm glow 5mm LEDs with the resistors already attached to them. Moving on to the firebox lights as well. We're using orange and red. These are 3mm, also with the resistor already attached. Then Revo smoke board. This is how we're going to be able to control it with our RailPro operating system. And then using our smoke units here that we have at the shop. Then a reed sensor with a magnet. We'll attach that for the chuff. And then here is our smoke harness. This is our preferred smoke fluid. You can get it at JT Megas. You can buy it on our website as well as JT Mega. And just all you have to do is reach out to us and we'll get that out to you. And if you guys have any questions along the way, go ahead and put them in the comment box, and we'll look forward to diving into this with you. This step we're going to use for this locomotive and install for a steam locomotive, we have to remove all of our stock sounds off of the RailPro board in order to have enough space or memory on the board to house the actual steam locomotive sounds, because all RailPro boards come stock with diesel sounds already loaded on them. So I'm going to show you how to do that process. You go into the home key on your RailPro remote. Both HC2 and HC3 operate the same. So you go into tools, find product, because we got to locate the board first. Comes up right away. This process can take a few minutes. Sometimes it's really fast, and others it's not so fast. But I do notice that if you hold your receiver and your remote parallel to each other, it usually moves a little bit faster. And then also too, if you have other trains that are RailPro, make sure they're turned off when you try to sync them, because that will interfere with the signal and you'll upload the wrong board. It's happened to me more than once, so I know it's not something I want to admit to, but it's a true statement. It happens. This is the longest sync process I've ever seen. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll go into Tools, we'll go into Software Update, and Delete Files. Select the actual device, and this should say No Name, which is what you see here on the camera. We want to go into Sound, and you're going to repeat this process for pretty much almost everything on here. Bell Bronze, we'll select that one because we don't want that. And go Delete. And sometimes each of these can be anywhere from 30 seconds to a full 5 minutes, depending on the sound file. Such as an engine file, those take a little bit longer. The sound files that are just a single motion, like a dinging sound, like a bell, that one will take about a minute. Any kind of voices that you may have pre-recorded, those are also about a minute. But short bursts, like a sanding or coupler clink, maybe about 30 to 45 seconds. And that's a normal thing. Know that you might have to select an item, set the remote down, come back to it. So this process takes a little bit of time, and as you can see, there's multiple sounds here to remove. So we're going to set this down and we'll come back to it. But I just wanted to show you that process so that way you know before you put in any kind of steam locomotive sounds, bell, whistles, engine sounds, that these files need to be removed so that you get a proper sound transfer and that it operates as it was intended to. As you can see, my setup here is pretty simple, all with the same things that we were just looking at in our initial page when we started our install, which was we're taking that power wiring harness and we're attaching it into the power leads of the board. We attached our battery that's already on the pre-hookup already. No, not big brainer there. And then our wiring harness. In any kind of RailPro installation, the green and red is always your speaker hookups because it's pre-set up for that already. So we have, this is a Phoenix speaker, and you can see it's just directly soldered to those wires. You can have the logging strand as you want. But this is allowing us to hear the samples that are on there once we do our transfer. But you can then, once you have this hooked up, as you see, you can put this off to the side, work on it as they become available, and you could be working on your installation at the same time. And it just allows you to move faster and get through the overall process faster as well. Moving into this installation, we're going to start with the tender because this is going to be your brain of the locomotive. It will be the receiver, and it's out of the way of any kind of smoke in the engine, the main compartment, as well as the engine has a lot more moving parts, a lot more metal in it, so that can also hinder your radio reception, RF reception for the RailPro board itself. In order to get started with this one, we're going to pull the top boards and all the loose pieces off so that they don't fall apart when we start to take our engine apart. And this one here has been modified a little bit, but in our operation and in our installs, we remove any kind of stock components that were a part of the engine. If there's something that you enjoy about the sounds or the functions of the train, either record it or you can program the RailPro board to do the same thing that the stock engine already does. By removing the components that are inside of the engine, we eliminate all the issues or anything possibly to go wrong with the engine itself, leaving only the RailPro board to be faulty, which it's made to operate a train of this size by itself. So all these other components are just double doing the same thing, causing more chances to fail. So we remove that, and we're going to dive into that process now. There's a total of 4 screws, I believe, that hold this together. They're just right here underneath the coal load, as you can see. There we go. We got a quick, simple installation process, or disassembly process, excuse me. So this one has an air wire system that's already put in here. We're not going to be using that. So we're going to take that one apart. Now, if again, there's something on the air wire system that you enjoy, then all you have to do is make sure you play that sound and record it with either your cell phone or some kind of recording device so that you can transfer the file to your computer and upload it separately. And you can see that process and how to do that process on the RailPro website. So we're going to get started and start taking stuff apart here. Pretty straightforward. So we're going to remove this and the harness. What we like to do, and it's just, you know, common courtesy for whoever purchases the system later on down the road, but we give them enough slack on the wires. So if they were to purchase this system and try to put it in one of their trains, they could do so, and there's enough of a wire to attach to with soldering leads here. This is a Phoenix sound speaker, so you're not going to get anything better than that. So we're going to reuse that speaker because I personally like those. That's something that I enjoy using. This looks like it has a power setup already for the actual pickups for track power. Now, as you can see underneath here, there is no engine whatsoever. These are just following wheels that roll behind your engine. So these are just trailing. This is a trailing car. but it has track pickups, and that can cause interference for if you're running on a power layout. We're going to remove those, and by removing them, that will allow us not to get any interference on or cause any interference to a track power layout. So we're going to remove those process today and show you how to do that. This has an also power supply that goes in the back. We will not be using that, so we're going to take that out. We're going to cut that here, and then just pull right out. And then underneath here, I'm going to cut that. Now what I'm cutting right now are the track pickups of the rear wheels that you see here, and I'm going to show you what to do with those because we're not using them. Now, what we'd end up doing is taking this part off completely, then just pulling this out. Now we put the actual screw back in the hole because it does have a significance by holding the side into this truck. So we definitely want to put it back, otherwise your wheels will fall off. Now you can cut them, or you can pull it out. I like to try to pull it out if I can. But taking them off so that there's no, physically there is no power going through this truck whatsoever, or causing any interference. So if you're having track power, you would leave these because you would need the pickups for if you're powering your RailPro board through track power. We do not do that. We do onboard battery so that this train can run either on track power or dead rail, whatever one you want. But it will have its own power system. And you can see how the wire comes right out. Now these will be packaged, and somebody could use them for their locomotive. Otherwise, you can contact Bachmann directly and speak to their parts department, and they will supply you with the parts that are needed. Pretty good at that. If they have them in stock, they'll sell them to you. Otherwise, you can call a lot of installation shops that do the same process, and they offer that to you as well. Okay, so now we got the pickups removed. We've already started. We got the electronics removed. We're keeping the weights. We're keeping the speaker. And we're keeping the two wiring harnesses here that you're coming through up the top of the tender here, or through the bottom, I guess you can say. Now we know that we have, it's a total of 4, so we have 7. So we have 14 leads that we can use to go to our locomotive that are here. And so we know that these two connections that you see here on the front side of the tender are going to be to use to rehook or to repurpose the connections for RailPro, because we're going to use our onboard battery. We're going to have our RailPro board in here, and we're going to be able to power everything here and then just send basically the signal for the lights, the engine, and the actual smoke unit. Okay, now we're going to begin the actual electronics installation of the tender. This is going to showcase how we're going to get our power, where the board is going to be installed, and also your power on and off function and charging functions. So diving right into that, and this is going to allow you to be your own decision of where you want to install your power switch. With our power assembly here that you can find at RLD Hobbies or also our website, you can put them on the inside, meaning having your power assembly here on the inside, and then cover it with a coal load. And then what we usually do is we have like a little piece of electrical tape that comes up so that it's a flange for you to pick it up and be able to lift it up and out each time if you don't want to see the switch and charging port. For me personally, I like to put it here. It's concealed enough where you don't see it all the time. And it's also quick and accessible for charging and on and off functions of the locomotive. So it's entirely up to you where you want to put it. And so we're going to dive into that and get that ready right now and go ahead and begin. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to put the switch on the top and the charging port down to the bottom. And I'll tell you why in a little bit once we get going here. So we're going to be mindful of this plastic inner portion. That's going to determine the location of our actual power switching. And then also too, you don't need to have this whole thing put on there because it just slips right off. No point of having this whole tender here to drill it and break something. The more times you handle something, the more times you're taking a chance of breaking it. So drill that out, and then you don't want to ruin your phone like I did, but both sides. Cleaning the hole, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. Okay, we're going to use our cover now that we got the holes drilled. Strip that in. Now, mind you that if you're doing it this way with the power switch, you need to put the power switch installed first, otherwise you won't be able to get it slide down on there. And then we're just going to double check our power here to make sure that we're putting in the right spot. So this is the upward. So we're going to go like that. I usually do, I leave it on the up position on, so that way I know I put it in the right position the first time. You can't see that, so I'm just sliding the washer over, or the lock nut. Okay, it's on there. I put it on there backwards. There we go. So this one I'm going to try to tighten as best I can, as tight as I can. So that way it's on and off, and making sure that that position going upward is on. I'm removing some of the glue because I put it in wrong first time. A lock nut, a washer. Now again, I'm going to say it again, is you don't want to tighten this one too much, because when you do, it breaks and snaps, and that's normal. So that's why we use the glue, just to hold it in position, because this is something that's going to get a lot of use by charging your engine, especially if you run it a lot. And this has been known to fix the situation of them breaking over time. So we're just going to basically stick some glue over it. That locks it into position. Keeps it there over time by you pulling it, yanking the charging cord in and out over the ears. And that's it. Just enough to hold it there. You're not trying to get crazy. Looks like I need to update my glue there. Next thing we're going to do is the light. We don't use their lights. So that's something that you can, it's up to you, but if you're changing out the electronics and the light, you don't need to have this on there anymore. So it looks like this one was glued on instead of screwed on. So I might have to break that to get it off, but I prefer not to. Yep, that's what it was glued on there. Got the wire. And again, I'm not using this black wire or any of them, the electronics from this installation, so no need for that. Okay, I got that removed. I'm going to remove this glue so that way we can get all this stuff out of here and make sure it looks good when we're putting it all back together off camera. Be right back with you guys. Okay, so back here with you, got that part cleaned out a little bit. So the light here looks like somebody had glued it in there. So what we're going to do is stick our curved needle nose and try to push this light fixture out because they glued the lens as well. And so what that does is it pushes it out and it pops the glue. That's in our best case scenario. If not, you might have to order another one. So that's the flip side. But they glued the lens on, so that makes it a little bit harder to do what it is we're trying to do, where this usually just pops off. But we like a challenge here at the Reale Railroad Shop, so I'm not afraid of it, but I'm showing you what I would do. Be careful because you don't want to cut your fingers. Okay, well, our tail light for some reason has been glued in together, so we're going to have to either order another one or do some maneuvering, some specialty tools to get that apart. But I wanted to keep the install video going, and then we're going to move on to the battery section of the video. So these two back stems in the rear of the tender we're going to remove so that we can get a larger battery in here. And I'm going to do that right now and show you. So that was my Dremel, and I just use that to cut it off near the surface because they're blocking the way for the battery. The next thing we're going to end up doing is using our 3M Velcro strips. These are really awesome. You can buy them at Home Depot, even Target. It's not the normal fabric kind. This is actually plastic. So we're going to just put that down right on top in the middle. And then we're going to take that off. So the reason why we took that out is so that we can put this larger battery in. Okay, and so now that's fixed there, and we're not going to have any issues putting it back together later on down the road. So you have the stem out here on their tender. And now that one just basically goes and plugs right in. So now we have power, if we want it. So let's make sure it's turned off. The next thing I like to do with this process or install is, since we cut these rear stems out to get a bigger battery in there, we're going to just try to slip that forward a little bit as much as we can. But we can also take it out and put it in there later on when we're not working on our, but we know where it's going to go now. The other thing I like to do on mine, especially if I'm not doing the power switch on the top portion of this, is I'll put the co-load here, and then I'll have my RailPro board right here, and it's easier accessible for me and to do my install, because now, as you can see on the video here, we have everything's accessible to our RailPro board. And then you'll never have to take the top off again because you'll have the power switch right here. However, if you did need to take it off, you can. It's not a problem. It's totally up to you, and you can get to replacing the battery and the switches if for any reason you had to. It's available to you. So we're going to get started on that next process now. Some people don't plug the wiring harness in to the board at first, and do all their soldering, their leads for that. You can do that as well. It's up to you. For me, as long as I don't have any power going to the board, I understand that it's not going to do anything to the board. So plugging that in, knowing what we're doing first and foremost. And then again with our 3M Velcro pads. Sticking that right to the board, making it convenient. Then the other thing I like to do is just taking a little bit of that electrical tape that we were showcasing earlier today. Putting that right on the middle portion of the board. Now you can put it wherever you want to put it. It's not like this is where it goes and that's just the way it is. It's entirely up to you what you want to do. Next we're going to do the power leads. Tighten that down. Okay, get the motor unscrewed. And then also power lead here. Oops. Now your own power supply and switch that you use is entirely up to you. This is not saying that this is the only one available. People make their own switches. I make a lot of my own switches, especially for diesel big power units. What we're doing here, it's not necessary. So now, I'll just stick that, take the tape off. Stick that down on there and that's it. Simple. And it's a lot cleaner, easier to work with. I know what I'm doing with my power. I know what I'm doing with locations of battery and so on and so forth. So it just makes it so much easier for me doing an installation like this. And you can see how much cleaner that is. So all we're going to be doing next is attaching all these leads. Again, this is entirely up to you for what you want to do. And how you do these wires is up to you as well. We know that we got 14 to use. We're going to solder them all together. We'll do that off camera. And it's going to take a few minutes to do so, and you don't need to watch me how to do that. Everybody knows how to solder. And we're going to attach our speaker leads, and that's going to complete the tender. And we'll come back and show you that all done and wired and how we do that. All right? So as we're connecting these wires, I wanted to go through and let you guys know where we're doing what we're doing. With RailPro, they come pre-assembled or programmed into the actual configuration of your remote control and your actual G-scale module. The coloring harness, green and red, is for your speaker. Orange is for your headlight, so we know that that one's going to go to the front. So let's find where's red and green. Okay, so green and red is your speaker. So we know that these are going to go here. Okay. Now the next portion of it is that we have our tail light. So blue is going to go to the tail light here, and we get that done and dialed in. Gray is going to go to our cab light. So we know that's going to go here. Then we need a power source to go there, which could be your red button here, which this wire is not shown, but we will have it on here for you next time. Then we have our class lights, which we're going to use it white. Then we have our smoke unit, which we're going to use black in this case. That will leave these wires on this harness. So we know that purple and the yellow is not going to be used for now. And then purple, white, green, yellow is not going to be used in this harness. So we can put those in the back here, or just tie them off. It's actually probably a better idea. So that they're out of the way. And what I like to do is to cut these. Let's do this so that it doesn't make a mess inside of our train. So that way that they're not going to hit anything and cause electrical failure or any kind of fault signal onto our install. But if we so choose, we have those wires and those leads available in the future if we want to do a different install or set this engine up, and we don't have to change the whole entire wiring harness. And so these leads will be here in the future if we so desire to do, maybe add more lights or create a different sound system or power another source. You have that available to you. Now those are out of the way. These are your power connections, so we want to utilize that. That's definitely a must. So we're going to keep those at the side. So now when I come back to you, you're going to have a lot more clean and everything wired up here, and you're going to see what we're doing. So let's get to that. Here you can see that we're just basically hot shrinking all of our connections after we have soldered them together. It's really, really important to follow the color lead chart on your RailPro sheet, meaning showing what connections go where. The rear light is blue. I know that for a fact because we do it all the time, but rear light is a blue line from your umbilical cord from your RailPro board. And so by doing that, not only you know that that's wired correctly, but also the next person, if you were to take it apart or to change out the board or the light configuration, you would know that the blue wire is obviously for the rear light. So that's what's shown here. I usually strip about 1/2 inch of wire from the actual wire overall, so that way I have enough space to solder the connection. One of the things to keep in mind is that we use flux in our solder, so they're both combined, and it just speeds up the process. It doesn't weaken the wire or the connection or anything, but then we do the hot shrink, and then that makes the line stronger. As you can see here, we're already jamming through it here. I also like to use wire ties, depending on what it's doing, like a light lead. If it's running for 12, 16 hours, that wire is going to get hot because the power is going to be constantly going through it. So we don't make things super tight. It's just to hold it in place so that way it's clean and easy for accessibility. When you make things really tight, the wires can get warm and then they can actually melt. So that's something that we want to avoid doing. So when you're putting wires together, be mindful of what they're doing. Power wires, light wires, not so much, but power wires, absolutely. And also driving wires, wires that go towards the engine or smoke unit for that matter. Next thing you can see here is we're straightening up our umbilical cord. With this, what we're trying to do is make a cleaner install, but also minimize the clutter. When you have something put together and then it just goes over to the other side of the tender, it just showcases how easy and clean you can make an install. But again, it also helps later on. Say for instance you wanted to upgrade, put a sound card in or change some wiring, or maybe even change out the RailPro board for a new board. All these things, it makes it cleaner and easier so you can identify your installation later on. One of the things here that I ended up doing was I repurposed the actual plugs for the tender that was done by Bachmann originally, just because they work. Why reinvent the wheel? But we need to know what the color wires are and where they're going. So what I ended up doing is I take off the undermount screws, then I pull these plugs up from the tender bottom, then I identify the color code. Then I can photograph it with my phone, or you can take the picture, send it to your computer, print it out, whatever it is, whatever works best for you. And then know that you're going to be turning it over because you got to remount it again. And then that way, when we have all these wires on the other end, we know how to attach our RailPro umbilical cord to those leads. That will allow us to repurpose these connections. They're already here. There's no reason to buy new ones. There's nothing wrong with these. So if you take a look at them, you can see here that in this part of the video, it showcases the wire and the configuration of where the wire color or which wires are coming from which leads, so that we know how to reattach our umbilical cord later on, shown in the video when we're all done here. And we simply put all the screws back, exactly the way they were. We're not changing or manipulating anything here. We just want everything to look good when it's done. And it's pretty self-explanatory, color cutting, color matching, and then actually just soldering those connections, which we do off camera. But we photograph these, and then we just use the same picture later on, so that way we know what we're doing when we get to the top side. We just look at our photo, and we're good to go. One of the things too is I just want to iterate. It's not necessarily you have to take everything apart, but for us, we want to be sure what those wires are and that configuration is. There's no way of telling what the color combination is from the pin down below. So we have to take those plugs apart from the bottom so that we can see. They're not always the same configuration. Every train I've ever gotten, they're always different. The color wires are different. The thickness of the wires as far as the gauge, there's always something different. These are mass-produced units, and so they use what they have on hand. Back then, there was a lot less regulations than there is now. So be mindful of, the reason why we're taking it apart is because we want to be sure. So that's the only way we can be sure. It might say something, but what it is in front of you is usually different. This speaker here was a lot of fun. This speaker was an actual Phoenix sound speaker, but the quality still works amazing. But I guess the indications of showing positive, negative on there were not there at all. So either they were covered with the solder or they had worn off. I'm not sure, but we just wanted to check it and make sure and verify that what it was. And so as we see here, we got the sound, it worked fine, and we were able to dial it in, and everything worked out great. So you can also see that I connected the speaker first before attaching the battery to the tender. So the reason I did that was just because I don't want to touch a battery next to a soldering iron. But the other thing is it just makes it more convenient for me later on. I can move that battery, whatever I want to do with it, no big deal. As you can see here, I'm starting to attach the headlight wire, which is orange, to the umbilical cord, and then I just go one by one to get it all dialed in, and so that way I know what is what on my other end. And so with this video, we'll go back and we'll be able to look at all of them and showcase all of them. But this is just to show everybody what we're doing here with the soldering and how we're doing it. Here you can see a lot of people just don't know the color combination of lights, and so what we're doing is we take all the black wires. Those wires go towards the color leads off of the RailPro umbilical. Then the brown for these particular lights go to, how would you say, the white or the red part of a wiring line. So that way it would go to the brown lines coming off the RailPro board. So I was just showcasing that. When we do the soldering, sometimes the wires bend or go different directions. What you want to do is you want to clean it up, and that way it doesn't catch the actual sleeve, but also untearing it. But that way it makes your process a lot easier when you're using the heat shrink. So you could see how, there's so many lines here that are coming out, but the yellow on a diesel board is usually used. Yellow and white is for your ditch lights. But here what we're doing is we're using them for, I believe, the boiler and the class lights, because it's a steam locomotive versus a diesel locomotive. Yes, it's redundant as far as all the soldering goes, but at least what we're doing is we're telling people about what we're doing, the reason why we're choosing those colors. And again, it's just for the next person, or if you want to identify something in a future install. Wire ties make everything a lot easier and cleaner, again, for yourself as well as the next person. We don't want to over tighten. They're not like super tight. They're just closed enough where it keeps the wires together and they can move around still. But not so much where it becomes a problem. I know a lot of people don't use wire ties because of the heat issues. It's a valid issue. If you're not running your train, for 16 hours straight all the time, it's not necessarily an issue. But if you are, then I wouldn't be doing a lot of these wire ties. It just makes it easier and cleaner for the installer as well as future installations of whatever kind you're doing. One of the crimping tools here, wire strippers, these things are just amazing. I've gone through, God, I don't know, maybe 4 in the last 5 years. I use them a lot. They save a lot of time, but literally thousands of wires they've helped, and engines that they've helped me build. So they're definitely a time-saving tool. When you get started on installation, it's all about time. Most customers don't want to wait a long time, so it's definitely something to be mindful of, and it's a tool that helps speed things along. You learn what works and what doesn't work. So again, I am hoping that this video does that for everybody. Passing the knowledge on and keeping the trains rolling is our ultimate goal here at the shop. So if it means that we're doing an installation or we're helping somebody do an installation on their own, we're game for both ways. It helps everybody to keep it going. Here what we did is we did the white wires, the gray wire, which is a cab light, and then I did the smoke for the chuff. The purple wire is what we're going to use, and so that allows us to synchronize the chuff later on. So we connected the purple with that second wire strand on the red line, so we know when we get to the other side which one it's going to be. So I'm really excited to get this going. And I think we used a black wire on the next side. So we use the black wire as a light, and we trigger that in for the smoke unit. And then we use the purple for the read sensor, which we'll do later on, and we'll show later on in the video. Here what I'm doing is I'm separating the wires so that the actual top of the tender can go down without interfering. But we want it somewhat tight to keep it together, but at the same time a little bit loose, so that the plastic can go down without hitting those wires, which was a little bit of an issue when I put it back. So maybe having a little bit more slack than you see here would probably be recommended. Now I'm just cleaning up the wiring harness here, making everything go in, cleaning it up, placing my battery. You can see here with these wires how much cleaner it is. It's not all bundled up everywhere. When you have bundles, it blocks the screws, and when you put the screws back down onto the tender, it can pinch the wire and sever it, and so causing shorts on your installations. So here, when I put it back together, I don't have any of those issues. It's clean, simple, and we're just jamming through it, as you can tell. And this is a really also great way of showcasing how much the RailPro really does and what it is capable of doing. Controlling your locomotive, receiving the signal, broadcasting it, controlling the sound. All you really need to do is have an on and off switch and a battery and a speaker. So keeping that in mind is something that's very helpful for you, but it also shows you how much needless electronics are in the locomotive. Join us in part 2, where we reassemble the tender, download the steam sounds, and install lights on the locomotive.